couple in their 60s have an opportunity to have God grant them a wish. And so the woman goes, well, I've always wanted to travel around the world with my husband. So there's a big billow of smoke, and when the smoke clears, there's 2 tickets in her hand. The husband goes, as he drops his head, always wanted to be married to a woman 30 years younger than me. Big billow of smoke. The smoke clears, and he's 90. Okay. Repeat after me. I am open to the evolution of my soul. I am open to the evolution of my soul. My mind is alert. My heart is receptive. My next step is here and now. And so it is. I want to talk to you today about perplexing perceptions. Because it is our perception that creates our life. Now, we go around thinking that the facts are the facts. I hear that all the time. Well, you can't change the facts. And I'm here to tell you that it's not about changing the facts. It's about seeing that there are more facts going on than you can see. Because there's always more going on. That's the beauty of this, is there's always more going on. So when I was a teenager, my parents were divorced. My dad had remarried. I only got to see him on Sundays. And one day, I was on the high school tennis team, and he calls up, and he goes, I want to take you to this doubles round robin on Friday. I got very excited. And the day came to go. I show up at his door at the appointed time. He opens the door, and he goes, I'm sorry, but my wife wants to go, so I'm going to take her instead. And I was devastated. And I left there, and I must have held a grudge to those two for like 2 years or more. I mean, I was so upset about that. Well, race forward to a couple of weeks ago, about 3 weeks ago, I have plans to go up and see my son in San Luis Obispo. He's very excited about it. I'm coming up there, seeing his new place, his new job, seeing how he set up his life. And 2 days before I'm supposed to go, my wife calls me and says, I just got the time off, and I'd like to book us a cabin in the woods. And she rarely gets that time off. So I knew this was an opportunity we could not miss. So I call my son, and I go, look, I'm really sorry. Can we move my trip up there 1 week? And he goes, sure, absolutely. I got tons of stuff I need to get done. I'll see you next week. So Ash and I, we go up into the mountains. We have this incredible weekend. The following week, I go up and I get to see my son, and he tells me about everything he was able to accomplish since I didn't come up last weekend and he had cleared his plate. So he's able to get all this other stuff done, and that really worked out for him. And him and I had this really great weekend, and it got me thinking about my dad and thinking about the perception I had about what happened, about how I wasn't cared about, and how I held a grudge, and all the time I lost because of that, where luckily my son was more mature than I was. And because of that, him and I got to have this great connection and great time together that my dad and I didn't get to have for many years later. Our perception has this incredible impact. There were all these other facts. I have no clue whether she also got the time off and it was a rare event, or what went on there between them that had him do that. What I know is from my own experience now, that there was definitely more going on I did not see. I didn't have to make something up. It was really there. Like the fact that there's this divine power in everything. We go around looking at our facts, looking at what's going on in our lives, and most of the time, if we're feeling really bad, it's because we left out the fact that God is present in this too. That there must be something more going on that we can't at the moment see. That it has to be here. And the difference in our perception can make a dramatic impact on what actually happens in our lives. My dad, when he was in his 70s, was diagnosed with stage 4 liver cancer. Now, the most interesting part about that was at the exact same moment that a friend of mine's dad, who was the exact age of my dad, almost the exact, very similar build, was also, and had lived a very similar life, was also diagnosed with stage 4 liver cancer. Exact same cancer they both had. Turned out they both had the exact same treatment. Now, my dad had 160 IQ. He was a brilliant man, incredibly logical. Everything in his life was about logic. He knew step by step how to do pretty much anything. And so because of his logic, he was sure he was going to die. That was his perception. Doctors, he's seen the x-rays himself. He went around telling everybody else he was going to beat it. He went around telling everybody he was going to beat it. And everybody, my brothers, my sisters, his wife, everybody was like rooting for him. He's going to beat this. He's going to beat this because he can do anything. But I looked at my dad and I could tell he didn't really believe what he was saying because he was a logical man. Now, this other person, my friend's dad, he was a spiritual man. He knew there was more going on than meets the eye. He knew that beyond the diagnosis, there was something possible that isn't in the natural and isn't in the logical. He knew he was going to live. So my dad died. Before he died, he traveled all the way down to where I was living at the time, just to make sure he knew, because he couldn't really talk to anybody else, that he was going to die. He wanted to at least be able to tell somebody, and he knew he could tell me. So he died. That was 16 years ago. The other man is still alive and doing great. Exact same treatments. They got the exact same chemo treatments, the exact same ways. For stage 4 liver cancer, where the prognosis is 96% chance you're going to die. And my dad was all about the logic. But this other guy wasn't. Perception. It really has incredible impact when we're willing to look beyond what it is we believe. I notice, and maybe you've noticed this too, that a lot of times in retrospect, when we look back on something, it's really easy to see something different about it. Is that right? You notice that? And when I was thinking more about that, it occurred to me that if I can see it in retrospect, I must be able to see it in the moment. You know, I have this amazing relationship with this woman, Ash, and one of the things about our relationship is that it's not perfect. Now, that may be hard to believe, that we argue sometimes and, disagree and it may be even harder to believe that sometimes some of the things she does actually upsets me. Even harder to believe that some of the things I do might upset her. What we have going on is our questioning to each other, is this the story you want to hold? Is this the perception you want to see? If you're upset, is that the perception you want to keep? And her and I are incredibly vigilant at questioning our perception of the situation. And you could say, but Cliff, it's the facts. This is really what happened. No, it's not really what happened. It's our perception and our interpretation of that perception of what happened. There's really no facts here that are just all the facts. It doesn't matter what the diagnosis is. It doesn't matter that you lost the job. It doesn't matter that the relationship fell apart. It doesn't matter that it looks like nothing's working. Everything, because the divine is present, must also hold the opportunity for something new to grow out of it. You know, the beauty, and here's a perception, the beauty of those darkest times is the ability to practice then. You have a choice, and any time something goes bad, you can say, defend how badly it is, or you can begin the process of looking for the gold, because it has to be there. There's God in everything. There's power in everything. There's spirit in everything, which means that somewhere in there is gold that we have yet to find. Elderly gentleman is told that he has stage 4 cancer and he's going to die. This is an entirely different person. All these are true stories. So he goes, okay, I'm going to die. How would I like to spend these last couple of months these doctors have given me? He goes back to the hometown in Italy where his parents were born that he'd never been to. And he lives in that town, taking walks to the beach, sitting at the local cafe, meeting all these relatives who he never knew, who take him into his home and love on him. And the guy lives another 20 years. Perception changes everything. As we go along here, you know, that's what's so perplexing when somebody comes and talks to me and says, these are the facts. I'm like, well, maybe, but there's got to be more facts with it. Now, some of you might think that I'm talking about a glass half full or half empty, but I'm actually talking about the pitcher, not the glass. Because there's always more facts going on. It's not about seeing the glass half full. It's about recognizing that the glass isn't just the glass. That what's ever in that glass came from a pitcher that's much bigger, that is much bigger power, that has a much bigger presence. And that's where the true power is not in the glass anyway. This isn't about positive thinking. This isn't about trying to fake it till we make it. No. This is about the very, very real fact that we are powerful, creative, spiritual beings. And behind everything that's going on is a power that wants us to move forward into the light, into a higher chance, into a higher way of being. That everything that happens for us is about rising our beingness. And that's what we're doing here, is facing opportunities time and time and time again that we get to perceive in a way to raise our beingness about life itself. Woman in a car, she was just grocery shopping. She gets back to her car. She puts the groceries in the back seat. And as she's getting into the front seat, she hears a gunshot goes off. Something smashes into the back of her head. She puts her hand back there and feels her brains falling out. So she leans forward and puts her head on the dashboard. A little while later, holding her brains in. A little while later, a man comes by and tries to get her attention. When he can't get her attention, he calls the police. Police come and try to get her to open the door. She's afraid to move because she's holding in her brains. They finally break the window and open the door. And they found that a Pillsbury dough box had exploded in the backseat of her car, and what she thought was her brains was dough that needed to be cleaned up. This is a true story. She was in that car for an hour. Positive. Her brains were falling out of the back of her head. Turned out to be Pillsbury dough. But she was sure. She was sure that it was her brains. Be careful what you're sure of. You just don't know what's real, what's possible, what's going on, because there's always something more going on than meets the eye. There's something more for us to live for. There's something more for us to reach for. There's just so much. Remembering there is more going on than meets the eye. Every single time you have it. Now, I'm not talking about spiritual bypass, where we jump past our feelings and just jump to some perception that we haven't really owned yet. I'm talking about wherever you are on the spiritual path, at whatever level you're at, simply being willing to be open to the possibility that there's more going on you've yet to see. That's all. It doesn't have to be that you jump to, oh, I feel great even though I was just told that I'm getting fired. No. But it is opening, well, if I am getting fired, there must be something else for me. And if I can't feel that right now because I'm so bummed out about this loss of income, at least let me hold the possibility as I go through whatever feelings I'm going through at the moment. You see what I'm saying here? It's not like you have to all of a sudden, it's not like you only get it right if you feel great about the fact you just got fired. I don't know that I would feel great about getting fired. But it does mean there's more going on, and it's for us to open to that possibility. So last Sunday, there were 29 people here. I started a year ago at this center. And a year ago, my first Sunday, there were 32. So in a year, it looked like not only hadn't it grown, it shrunk. And it would have been really easy after a year to get discouraged about that, to have it bring me down. But instead, I know there's more going on here than just how many people show up on Sunday. Like when I showed up my first day on the job, I got a call from Burbank Power and Water saying we owed them so much money they were shutting us down. And then 2 days later, I get a call from Spectrum saying we're turning off your phones and your internet because you haven't paid us and you owe us too much money. Now that was a year ago. In this past year, we've paid off all those debts. We've solided out this place financially in a way that knows it's going to continue now. It has a solid base. Every month now comes in the black instead of the red. It took us 2 months to just change our bookkeeping system so we could understand we were losing money, that we could actually see it. It took several more months just to turn it around and get our expenses and everything in line with what was going on here. And so sure, there were 29 people here last week, but we're also at a foundational place where we have an opportunity to grow in a way that we've never had since I've been here, because all I've been doing so far in the first year was putting out fires. Talking to Burbank Power and Water and saying, please don't turn us off. We will pay you, and we have. We got a Burbank bill from Burbank Power and Water that wasn't in red. That means we don't owe them any money. It was an actually up-to-date bill. So I look at that, and that's what we have. You know, so many times we get, my wife was just finished up she works for an amazing company, a community of women, over 100,000 of them, and they put on these extraordinary workshops. One just finished, and in the chat at the end of it is this huge list of compliments of people just going on and on to Ash about how incredible she is. And then at the bottom was this one person who said, I don't trust you no more. And so I noticed that it really took her a minute to not get disheartened by the one comment instead of the whole other list. Because don't we do that? I've done that, right? Gone and done like a talk like today. And lots of folks will come up to me and tell me how great the talk was. And then one person will come up and say, I didn't really get what you were talking about today. And, you know, we latch onto that instead of all the others. That's a perception. That we're kind of, all of us, can be pulled towards if we're not being conscious, if we're not being clear with ourselves, if we're not ready to remind ourselves that that's not the one to focus on. Look at all these others over here. Let's put our attention there, right? Put our attention on all the good stuff that's going on, because there is always good stuff, because it's divine. Like the last couple weeks, we've been talking about sacred. Every breath we take is sacred. If the first breath is sacred, every breath is sacred. If every breath is sacred, everything we do with that breath is sacred. And so it doesn't feel very sacred when all we're doing is focusing on the one person who's saying, when everybody else was going, yeah. And so where we put our attention is really important. That doesn't mean we don't want to grow. One of the things we do around here every single week is talk about how to make Sunday's experience better. May not seem like it when we're having all these technical opportunities, but we really do talk about that and work on it to make it better. Which means I'm really open to your feedback around that. I would love for you to come and give me your ideas on how to make this better. And because I know I get to choose my perception, I'm going to choose the perception that you actually care and not that you're being critical. Right? Because when you open yourself up to others' feedback, it can feel critical. Instead of that the other person simply cares, and how they're delivering it may not be great, but there has to be some gold in here somewhere, since they're coming to talk to you. They care. And if it's true that they actually don't care, then they're hurting and need our compassion. So we always get to pick a perception that works for us. We always get to pick a perception that will lift us up instead of drop us down. If you want to go to Napa Valley to taste their fantastic wine, you do not drive south from Los Angeles. Okay? It's the same with our perception. Pick one that drives you closer to where you want to go. And again, I'm not saying make something up. I'm telling you it's there. It's always there. It has to be. Everything is divine. There's something in absolutely everything that is the beauty. You got to find it. And you can't find it if you're not open to at least looking for it. So here's something, all right? If you ever feel alone, remember that there's only one. It's the first line of our treatment. There is only one. If there's one, you can't be alone. You can't be both at the same time. If you're feeling alone, you're not feeling the one. If you're feeling the one, you can't be feeling alone. So it's always a good idea, as we teach around here, to go into treatment or to call somebody who can treat for you, which is why we have practitioners in this place who can remind you that of course you're not alone, because there's only one and we're all connected, and that's how it actually works. And that's a fact. Little girl is crying as she's watching her dead dog being buried in the front by her brother. Her dad's holding her. She cries for a little while. And then he takes her to the backyard where she has planted flowers several months earlier that have now bloomed and blossomed and are gorgeous. And the same little girl starts laughing. Both are true. Her dog is dead, and there's this gorgeous flowering backyard. So the question I ask you today is, which one do you want to be focused on? I'm not saying don't have your grief and loss. I'm saying that be open to that there's more. I'm saying that in everything is God. In everything is beauty. In everything we get lifted up to an opportunity to be more than who we were a moment earlier. Every time we're confronted with the dark, we get to rise. We get to find that new perception that helps us be more than who we were a moment before. This is what's available to all of us. Why don't we rise together? Thank you. All right. Take out what you're going to give. Hold it in your hand. Now, you do not want to have this folded up or crinkled. This is God too. This is power. Open it up and hold it in your hand. You are creating the law of circulation. You are sending out what it is you want to receive. So take it out and hold it in your hand. Feel the power. This is energy. This is God. This is spirit. This is that one force that we all know is within us, without us, and everything. And as we hold it in our hands, let's say our affirmation together. God is the source of all supply. Money is God in action. What we give, we receive multiplied abundantly. All that God is, I am. And so it is.